One of the main reasons that we are under the illusion of the ego, that we are a separate individual self locked in this bag of skin, is because we're not playing the game of black and white. Now, what is this game? Well, first, let's talk about your senses. Because all of your senses is a form of touch. You see, seeing is just like touching your eyes and whatever receptors it is touching there. Hearing is just vibrations of sound coming in contact with your eardrums. So your senses are a form of touch, a form of vibration. And everything basically in the physical world is a form of vibration. And the vibration has two aspects. It's either on or off, on or off. And vibration comes usually in waves. And waves always have a crust and a trough. So life is basically a system of now you see it, now you don't. Now you see it, now you don't. And these aspects always go together. They are inseparable. There is no such thing as a half wave or a particle just sitting by himself. Because you can't imagine a particle by himself. There has to be space around it. So for space to exist, there must be particles of stuff. And for stuff to exist, there must be space. Because if space doesn't exist, what is separating the stuff from each other? And if stuff doesn't exist, how do we know that there is space between them? These two imply each other and cannot be taken apart. Just like you don't have on without off, up without down, or black without white. And just as you don't have a front of the cat without a back of the cat. If you try to separate them and cut them apart, the cat will die. And the same thing is happening when you're listening to music. You might think that you're just listening to one note coming after another, one is higher, one is lower, but it's actually not. When you listen to music, it's always sound and silence, sound followed by silence, followed by sound, followed by silence. These two cannot exist without each other. Sound and silence is just as a pair like on and off or buying and selling. One does not exist without the other. They are different but at the same time one. You see, different things can be inseparable as we talk about it, but they actually form, underline that, a unity. And if you forget that they form a unity and they are inseparable, funny things will happen. Because if you forget that black and white are inseparable, and in the same way existence is made up of being and non-being, then you get scared. And you think that, black might win. And immediately after that you say, no, white must win. And from this starts all of our trouble. Because now the game has turned into black against white, and most of the time white against black. And most of this happens because of the way we perceive the world. You see, human awareness is an odd mechanism because we have specialized in our ability for conscious awareness. We have what's called conscious attention, that we can focus in very high detail on small things, just how I'm focusing on the camera right now and on nothing else. The camera stands out and I ignore the background. And the price that we pay for this conscious attention is ignorance of everything outside of its field. Or I would rather actually say ignorance, because we regard some things as more significant and other, and pay attention to that and ignore the rest. Because our conscious attention is like a scanning process. It scans the environment bit by bit, and then we are under the illusion that the world is made up of a whole bunch of bits and things. Because we confuse reality as it is with reality as we think about it. Because on one hand we have reality, and on the other a system of symbols around that reality. Now these symbols are very useful. But the problem with them is that we confuse them with reality. Now, for example, we might use the symbol of water to explain how electricity works, but we don't confuse water with electricity. And in reality, a lot of things don't exist. There are no such things as events or things, because we separate them with our own perception. We are the ones that cut them up into things. It's just like we pick out certain stars from the sky and call them a constellation, but they are not out there grouped in reality as constellations. It is there in the mind's eye, but it is us who have picked them out. And we don't see that our world is a system of inseparable differences, and everything exists with everything else. It is only us that separates things from each other. But we don't notice that, because we notice what is noteworthy, what is significant, and we ignore the rest. Just how we only pick out a certain number of our inputs from our senses, because we always get constant feed of inputs from our senses. You are always feeling how hot it is in the room, you're always feeling your butt against the chair or your clothes against your skin, but you are not aware of them. You only pick out certain things from your perceptions and from your inputs. And because of this, we think that we are separate being, isolated by our skin from the rest of the world. And this mechanism is also involved in us not noticing that black and white go together, that every outside has an inside, and what happens inside of your skin is inseparable from what happens outside of your skin. Now, as we talked about it, these polarities and pairs, black and white, up and down, inside, outside, light, dark, sound, silence, are inseparable. You can't have selling without buying. One implies the other. But the problem is that we ignore two very important factors. And our ignorance of these two factors is in part what causes our illusion of the ego. And this is why we don't realize that all of us are one self in disguise. And the first one is that these opposites, black and white, appearance, disappearance, solid and space, are the aspects or poles of the same thing. If you have a light switch, for example, it doesn't matter if it's on or off. The switch will be made out of plastic or whatever, either way. The substance of the switch won't change. Just like in this way, on and off or inside outside are the aspects of the same thing. But we don't have a word for that thing. We only have these vague words like being or God or the ground of being. The second is that we are so absorbed in our conscious attention, in our narrow perception of the world, that we think this is the only and real way of seeing the world. We are hypnotized by its cut up and fallen apart view of this universe. We think that this world is a collection of separate things that somehow got together, and we also are just an individual separate thing that exists separate from the rest of the universe. And we don't realize that it is only our perception of the world that makes us believe so. Now, in other words, we are not playing the game of black and white, this universal game of up and down, inside and outside. Instead, we're playing the game of black versus white or white versus black. We think that one of them could win. For example, in life or death, being, non-being. This also seems just like another one of those polarities, like up and down. We see life as a positive and death as a negative. And we want to keep the one and eliminate the other one. But we don't realize that they are inseparable, that they go together, that life implies death, and death implies life. life is for the one who is alive, death is certain, and the one who is dead, life is certain. They go together. One doesn't exist without the other. And we think that white can win the game and defeat black, but this is a stupid game that we're playing, because it's like trying to keep the crust of a wave and getting rid of its trough. But we are so brainwashed and bamboozled and hypnotized that we forgot that we can't have one without the other. This is the trick that we played on ourselves. We don't know that nothing is something. Because everything that you think of as nothing, empty space, death, sleep, decay or dissolution, or everything that goes against the structure or the thing, we see them as bad, bad, bad. And we try to get rid of those things, and we say that white must win. But we don't realize that there is no winning without losing. And you can see this everywhere. In technology and science, for example, there is disorder and order, or order and chance. And they also seem to be one of these polarities. And we try to control everything and put everything into order without realizing that order does not exist without disorder. This is the trick of the black and white game. It's a conspiracy between the partners to look as different as possible and to hide their unity, because there is unity in self and other, in individual and universe. So I hope that you like this video. If you have any questions, or if you want any advice, if you want to talk about something, I do free one-on-one calls. You can send an email to me and we'll contact each other. So I'm very interested in what you think about this black and white game. I heard and read most of it from Alan Watts. There is one chapter in his book called The Black and White Game. In his book called The Book. I'm reading it in Hungarian, it's called a könyv. And I also watched some videos, some talks he gave about this black and white game. And I really wanted to share my thoughts about this and what I learned, because I think that this is a very fascinating game that we don't play usually. So I hope that you like this video. Have a great day. Goodbye.